Hi everyone. So today we're going to be taking a look at Paragon's card system. Now this is basically Paragon's version of the item store that you would use in-game to level up your hero, gain new abilities, or for instance just become more badass really. Now Paragon is a MOBA. It's a 3D third-person MOBA at that, so it's skewing the usual League of Legends or Dota 2 and much closer really to games like Smite. However, done in Epic's beautiful stylings, as it were, that really creates a game that is just glorious to play. But first let's go and have a look at how this works. So each hero has a particular kind of attunement. So in Dekka's case she can use growth or order cards. Now all the heroes also get access to the standard deck of cards, a basic deck as it were. So when you first join a match, if you've never played this game before, each hero will have a starter deck available to them. But you can go and build your own decks once you've opened up some card packs. Now, let's go and actually have a look at how this works in practice. I'm actually going to build a brand new deck here, and we're going to do it for Twin Blast. Now Twin Blast can only use Fury, so it makes it a little bit easier, because we're not going to have to worry about lots of different colour types or anything like that. Now I'm just going to create a brand new hero for this guy, clean the boards as it were. Now, your cards are broken down into three specific areas: your prime, your equipment, and your upgrade. Now, a prime card comes into play when your OP bonus gets put onto your team. Now, this happens if you return the power orb. Now, essentially what these are is like a mega buff. And really these are like your deadlock breaker. So if the match has gone to sort of like the 45-minute mark, 50-minute mark, you may very well see a team attempt to return the power ball and essentially, or power globe, and essentially activate one of these. Now the vast majority of people tend to pick Warlord, which gives you a 75-point damage bonus, 100% damage bonus, and 100% damage versus minions, 2 minions. Essentially that is great for just balling down the lanes and finishing the match. So we add one of those. You've got the other guys there, the Centurion and the Archmagus. Really what you want to be picking here is what your particular hero is best at. So for instance, Murdoch is probably better off with energy damage. Now, equipment. This is where things get a little bit more interesting. Essentially, there are three cards here that you probably are always going to want to pick. Now, these are active cards. These are the ones that during the first few minutes of a game are really crucial. Health, Mana Potion, then the Harvester Key, which allows you to place the Harvester, which is where you're going to get card points from, as well as obviously card points from killing heroes and minions and so on, and the Scout Ward. Now, you can pick these depending on how you like to play the game and how your role is going to fit. Pretty much everyone wants to take health and mana. Some people will take additional cards as well. Oh, they appear to have changed that maybe. For instance, taking the Scout Ward or the Harvester Key. Now, personally for Twin Blast, what I tend to do is I stick with a Mana Potion and a Health Potion, and I leave myself a bit of flexibility in other places. Now, this is where we get a little bit more interesting. This is where we have to start thinking quite carefully about which cards we're going to be using. This is where we start basically upgrading ourselves. So you can see each of these cards have a cost. Now these are our equipment cards. Now essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to take a selection of equipment cards, and then we'll be choosing upgrades to slot into these cards. Can you see each of these cards has 3 slots? And each card has a set of bonuses. Now when I, during a match, choose to use a card, it gets added to my card roster as it were, and it's activated. And that immediately gives me 7.6 physical damage and 6.5 attack speed. Plus then, whatever additional upgrades I slot into this card, and if I complete the entire 3 card stat line, I gain an additional 6.5% attack speed. So, this is how we start to try and work out how our meta is going to be during specific time periods of the game. For instance, in the first 3 to 4 minutes of the game, I really want to get this card completed, or whatever card I choose to play during the game, as completed as quickly as possible. So you can see these card scores here. 2, 2, 2, and if I come down here, 3 and 3. Now, just to explain, red cards are obviously red, they denote Fury. That is an attunement directly for Twin Blast. These grey cards are common cards, and they are universal and available to everybody. And so this is where we kind of get into a bit more of the specialities, as it were. You can see here I've got quite a few Fury cards that are, you know, quite specific and give very unique bonuses in comparison to what the common cards might give out. So, let's pick our first card. Now, the first one I tend to go for is Red Eye Nitro, because during that first initial burst of time in the game, that first couple of minutes, one of the things I want with Twin Blast is I want my attack speed to ramp up as quickly as possible. And I also want to start stacking some criticals for later if I can. Now, because with each equipment card, your stat line there, attack speed and critical chance, denotes what upgrade you're going to be able to put in there. So you can't, for instance, if you have a card with attack speed and critical damage, stack damage, critical chance and attack speed, you can't stack a damage buff in there, obviously, and you can't stack a health buff in there. So you'll have to choose carefully and wisely, building your decks out to maximise not only your damage potential, but your survivability as well. So, Red Eye Nitro is my first one that goes in. Now the easiest way to do this is to think about each of these cards operating at 10 points. When you complete the card, you want 10 points in total. The base card cost of 2, plus then your upgrades. Now this is more important in the first initial few minutes of the game than it becomes later on when you've maybe started really racking up the card points. The simple reason for this is, if you were to buy, for instance, a 3-card equipment card, and then you start trying to stack in 3-point upgrades, you very quickly find that it's costing you 12 points to complete a card instead of 10 points. What we're trying to do is optimize how quickly we can unlock those bonuses, the card bonus as it were, for completion. So we're going to go into upgrade, and then again here we have basic cards available to everybody, specific cards denoted with a red orb against it here. Now what I can do is have a quick look, and bearing in mind you've got these filters up at the top here which makes things a little bit easier. So if we just want to go like that, we can filter it down when it actually works. I think that might be bugged at the moment, is it? Critical chance? Or is it that you can only do... Yeah, so you can't stack... Because an upgrade card would only have one bonus on it, there's no point in ticking multiple filters when you're on the upgrade screen, only when you're on the equipment screen where you can then be able to filter for both buffs. Okay, now let's quickly go through this because this is makes things a bit easier. Now obviously what it's done here is it has filtered it and it's showing me the upgrade cards as well as the equipment cards there as well. But can we see here that this Connect card has a cost of 2? And this particular Red Eye Nitro card has attack speed and critical chance. So attack speed, that's something I want. Now, again, what I'm trying to do is get this card up to 10, no more, no less. So we'll add 2 of those, and then my choice here becomes something quite interesting. Do I go with a 3-card Major Kinetic, which gives me 19 points of attack speed, or do I go with where's she gone? Where's my critical? I'm sure I had a critical in here somewhere. Oh, it's because I'm on attack speed. Crit chance. Or do I go with something like Major Wound, which gives me a 12% critical chance? Now, bearing in mind, Red Eye Nitro already gives me a 4% crit chance just by slotting the card initially. So, by adding an additional 12%, and bearing in mind this is in the opening minutes of the game, so in the first few minutes I've already managed to increase my attack speed considerably, and then I've managed to stack a bit of critical. So you can imagine that when I come to then now do my next card, which is probably going to be physical damage, I'm now buffing my physical damage, my crit chance is going up, and I'm hitting that much quicker. So let's go and do that next. So we'll take that off, and we'll come back to the equipment cards, and we'll have a look. Now again, at this point we could, if we wanted to, just stick around with the 2-point cards, and again go for another 10 base. That's what we're going to do. So we've got 7.6 of physical damage and 6.5 of attack speed. When it's fully upgraded on this stat line, I gain another 6.5 attack speed. Now, bearing in mind, I already have some attack speed stacked, and that's going to give me another 13% once this card completes. We'll add that one. Now, damage is really crucial for Twin Blast. He is all about meting out large amounts of automatic attack damage. Those auto attacks, so you want those auto attacks running as fast as possible, having the highest level of crit possible, and doing lots of damage. A critical is worth, as standard, 200% of your damage. So you can imagine suddenly being able to drop, if you're hitting for 50, suddenly hitting for 100 at an early part of the game makes a big difference. Certainly in those team fights, and also for really pushing lanes and zoning out your opponent as well. So we now come into here, and what we're going to do, filter for some physical damage. And in here we've got major strikes, strike and minor strike. Now you can see minor strike's only got a cost of 1. Now if I wanted to, I could strategically play this particular card to basically get my stat bonus as quickly as possible. I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is stick with the 10 base. We're going to use 2 of those and 1 of those. That means my card is completed, and essentially for this one I'm straight away going to have 7.6 plus 22.7 plus 2 cards there, which is, call it 30. That's 50. There's nearly, what, 170, 80 points of damage there available in that stat line, and more importantly I've got it completed really quickly. If I had gone in here and I'd gone with 3 of these, now yes, it's a massive boost, there's what, 60, nearly 70 points worth of damage available there, but it would have taken me at least 1 extra card point, as it were, to achieve that. That's what, another 1,000 card points needed during a match. You have to do is balance how quickly you can essentially get these bonuses to then put them into the fight. There's no point if you're essentially having to be really heavily carried until really the mid game or even the late game. You may even get to the late game before you get knocked out essentially and your team is destroyed. So really what you want to make sure is that you're leveling up as quickly as possible, gaining these bonuses and putting them to work for your team. There's plenty of time later to go for some of those bigger Hail Mary cards, as it were. Speaking of which, let's have a quick look at some of those. So let's go back again, let's have a look at the equipment cards. Now, these standard cards don't discount them, especially if you don't have a lot of colour-attuned cards for your hero. There are good bonuses in here, and they do certainly keep the playing field level, as it were. So again, things like 7.6 physical damage and 100 max health, I would honestly consider throwing that into Twin Blast for the mid part of the game, giving him a little bit more health, even if you're just popping in a little bit more, and while still building your physical damage. Remember, complete the line, you're going to get 15.2 physical damage anyway. So I pop that one in. But just as we move on, as it were, I'm just going to quickly come down here, because we do have Portal Stone. Now this is a cost 7 card and it has no additional bonuses on there, and it allows you to teleport to an allied structure. I've never seen anybody use it, but it's interesting there are these really high point cards in here. But let's go back to the upgrades a second. Now in here you can see I do have a level 4 card, Vicious Kinetic. Now this essentially, and these are available, all heroes have access to, you know, big point cards, as it were. These ones really can come into play in a few different ways, depending on how that initial kind of pick for you has gone. Because, you know, if you've only picked out Health Potion and Mana Potion, you've got 1 point spare at the beginning of a match. In theory, having Vicious Connect there with 26 attack speed on there can give you a big boost if you happen to hold over a point. So essentially, that first card you kind of slot up here for Red Eye Nitro, if you carry a point over, you could slot that one instead. Ooh, suddenly you've gained a little bit more of an advantage during those first few minutes. And all of the different heroes have these kind of cards available to them where they're big point scores, and, you know, use them sparingly, but they can give you an advantage at just the right moment during the game. It really does open up the meta in interesting ways. And again, as you can see here, we have quite a lot of different cards available. Many of them energy damage. That's not really something I use, but because they're a standard card, as it were, a universal card, they are available there. What I'm going to do in a moment, I'm going to go and show you a different hero where there's a bit more of a mix of these really big point cards, so you can get a bit of a flavour for that. But let's finish building out this deck. So one of the things I've added there was Adamant Edge, physical damage and max health. Now you can see here I've got lesser health, so I can add health into this card if I want to. And somewhere in here I should have greater heals, greater guard, greater drain, greater health. Max health 300 points. Now Twin Blast is really a glass cannon, but giving him a bit more survivability, bearing in mind if he's able to put out a huge number of hits very quickly, his ability to stand down against another hero is really down to how much damage he can do and survive versus how much damage the opposing hero is able to put out before they freak out and run away like a little girl. So having a bit of extra health there, along with your ability to put out some big damage numbers, the criticals, can make people think twice about engaging you for too long, especially if they're seeing their health dropping much, much faster than yours is. So don't discount things like health and survivability, even for the glass cannons. It can make a big difference in those mid stages of the game. So again, what I'm going to do here, this particular card is really all about, I'm adding a bit of health and physical damage. So we're just going to throw more physical damage onto this card, basically. Now you do need to be careful. You will have a limit on the number of cards available to you based on what cards you've earned from opening decks, and that are available as part of the standard universal cards, as it were. So do bear in mind, you can't go utterly crazy here. You will always have to manage these things out. Now, this is going to probably be the third card I go for during a match, and so I have really stacked that out. Really, at this point in the mid part of the game, I want to burst my damage as far ahead as everybody else as I possibly can, bearing in mind that survivability for Twin Blast is pretty good because you can jump out the way and run away, etc. So we can kind of go for that. Now, some of the other things you can look at is cooldown reduction, how often you want your abilities to be able to pop. Now, for someone like Twin Blast, who is so focused on his auto attacks, it doesn't really make that much of a difference particularly. Really what you want to do there is just lots of damage, lots of crit, lots of attack speed. So that's why we're going to keep doing that, basically. So we've got a few other things in here: physical penetration, cooldown reduction. These just aren't really good for Twin Blast in my opinion. But here's one that I really like: Bone Dice. High critical chance, and then a when critically wounded 20% additional critical chance. Now you can imagine if you're getting wailed on by Killari or some of the other melee DPS, basically having a additional critical bonus when you drop below 20%, again, it could just be the difference between survival and death. So for this one, we're going to just stack critical into here. I do believe I have major wound, critical chance, and again I'm just going to stack that with as many as I can. I haven't got enough, so we'll now go and find some lower end ones we can throw in there, which are the wound cards. So we're going to throw a few of those in just to balance it up a bit. Generally speaking, I tend to end up with a lot of critical. So again here, Blast Harness, attack speed, and a 50% critical bonus when the card is fully upgraded. So instead of your critical bonus being 200%, suddenly it's now 250%. And we're going to be using attack speed here, so we're going to ramp up attack speed, which means those attacks are hitting that much quicker. If my critical chance has also gone up, and I'm hitting anywhere criticals of around 40%, you can imagine Twin Blast is able to do a humongous amount of damage every few seconds. It really does reach some pretty enormous numbers at times. Now, let's have a quick look. So what we're looking for here is, just remind myself, I want attack speed. So Vicious Kinetic, we haven't got one of those at the moment, so let's throw in some majors. Get those in there. Let's have a quick look. Now up here, by the way, is the number of cards you can currently hold in your deck, and that is a total. You've only got 40 cards, and that is spread across your primes, your equipment, and your upgrades. Use them wisely, use them carefully. But as we're now kind of drawing into a point where we're going to run out of major cards, as it were, the equipment cards, that we'll be able to slot during a match, we'll then have a little bit of spare leeway, essentially to create a deck that has that flexibility that if you need to respond in a particular way, you need to suddenly stack a lot of health, you need to suddenly stack a lot of cooldown reduction, that you've got that in your kit bag, even if you're not necessarily going to use it every time. So let's have a look here. We've got things like power cord, we've got some armor, and so on. So what I really want to do at this point is just have a think about how my mana might be during this match. Now, he doesn't really rely on mana too much, but I want to start thinking about how I'm going to deal with the problem where if I'm basically continuously getting slammed, how I'm going to be able to stay in the fight whilst also making sure that I've got the mana to do the necessary. So here we're going to go with Fountain Spike, and into this we're going to add some mana. Now, we've got various different ones that we can use here, and again, this is all about flexibility, because if you look at the card, it also has physical damage on it, and so I'm going to add another physical damage through Major Strikes, and I'm then going to add some mana in as soon as I can find my mana card. Advanced mana, and we're going to add 2 advanced mana. Oh, I've only got 1. Dang, I'll have to use a low end card, so we'll use a lower end card. Now again, bearing in mind these point costs, that's a 2, I've added 3s. I've slightly broken my rules at this point about the 10 base, because in my opinion, once you reach that midpoint of the game, you should, with the Harvester Spikes and everything else, be drawing in enough cards that you can start going 3-3-3, really powering those cards forward in the mid-game. You do have to be careful when you get to the end half of the game, the late stage game, that you don't essentially run out of cards, or find that you're not acquiring enough cards to then get these completed, the equipment cards completed quickly enough. So now we're at 31 of 40, and I've still got more I could be doing. I can now start looking and seeing about some sort of special effects, some more special effects as it were. So let's have a look. Incessant Onslaught. This is one of my little personal favourite cards. On hit, plus 10% cooldown reduction for 4 seconds. Now, if you imagine that you're continuously getting hit by various things, and I think this card stands for on player hit, means when you get hit, not when your attacks hit another player. Perhaps the devs could shed some light on that one. Maybe it's a little ambiguous, but that's the way I've sort of been taking it and playing it. And again, on this particular card, Incessant Insult is all about attack speed. So let's find as much attack speed as we can in here. Major Kinetics, we'll just ramp those right up. Brutal Kinetic has been able to be put in as well. Really, there's no difference that I can tell between having an attuned card and the common card. I kind of would like, I think, the devs to do something a little different there. Maybe if it's an attuned card, give us another 0.5, round that up to 24 or something. Would be really nice. And again, in here, what we really want is attack speed. So we should have some lesser attack speed somewhere in here. Kinetic. Just add another one of those. Remember, to 35 or 40. Now, really, you should have your Harvester Key in there, and you probably should have a Scout Ward as well, in case you want to use them. And that now leaves you 37 or 40. You could then go in and add some different cards in here from these, or add a different equipment card to give yourself a different opportunity for your bonuses. And again, what you're trying to do is create some flexibility. Don't feel like you have to play one really rigid build. You don't. And actually, the best matches are the ones where you're actually forced to, you know, change your strategy, change your card strategy on the fly to respond to a particular bully in a lane who's giving you trouble. So in which case, I'm going to stack even more health, or I'm going to stack even more critical damage, and I'm going to go back out there and I'm going to show him exactly how to really fight me. So do look at these various bonuses and do sort of think to yourself, well, in particular situations, how will I deal with that? How am I going to have survivability? How am I going to burn down that tank really, really fast? And what do I need to do it at particular stages of the match? So in here I might go for something quite simple like energy damage and critical chance. You could go for, again, not really good with Twin Blast. You could go with physical damage and critical. Spear of the Rift Hunter. I don't think we have one of those in there yet. So you could just throw that one in there. And then you could add a couple more equipment cards if you want, or you could quite easily just go through and add a few more of these. Do it however you want. Bearing in mind you've already bought quite a lot of your cards here, and you're probably, because you're crossing over quite a lot anyway, critical chance, attack speed and so on, you can have that little bit of flexibility to get your different fully upgraded bonuses out there. Maybe my style is not the exact best way to run these card decks, but this is what's working for me. It's giving me that flexibility during the matches to have some control and not feel like, you know, I'm playing this rigid build and I have to do these things and I have to do it in this particular way, and oh god, it's gone wrong and that's it, my game's ruined and I can't recover from this because, you know, my strategy is bust. If you're playing the game like that, you're playing like a pudding. What you really need is flexibility, because no two matches are ever going to be the same, and the strategies are going to constantly evolve, and you need to respond to what's actually happening to you and how you're finding taking down enemy opponents or taking the damage yourself. Don't pigeonhole yourself, basically. Give yourself plenty of flexibility. Now, let's go back to have a look at a hero who has a little bit more going on in the equipment stakes. So this is Sparrow. Sparrow is another range damage dealer. Again, very much active on her auto attacks, but has really good wave clear as well from her hail of arrows. But as you can see here, she has an awful lot of cards which are power 6, 5, 4 and so on. Again, as we've discussed, making sure that you're getting the right bonus at the right time, completing cards really quickly, is utterly crucial. These equipment cards have to fall fast. You've got to get them up and get them completed. But when you have things like on ability hit, plus 70 move speed, and these are really useful bonuses, but obviously they come at a cost. A power 6 cost, effectively. So how do you kind of work around that? Well, essentially you're going to have to save up during the match to be able to buy the card, but then try and complete that card as fast as possible. So if it's a power 6 and you've then got some upgrade cards which are power 1, well, there's a good match, isn't it? This is a good marry. Take a 6, add 3, gets you 10, or well, gets you 9, or you could do 2 and 2 to get you 10. You can do it whichever way you kind of want, but there is that flexibility in there, and more importantly, the meta is gonna force you to choose what is more important to you and when. How do you want to run this character during the first 3 minutes of the game, 10 minutes of the game, 20 minutes, and God forbid if it goes that far, 60 minutes plus of the game? Yes, I've had some games that have gone that long. Wow, it really can be an endurance sport, I tell you, playing this game in third person for an hour. A real endurance. But anyway, it gives you a flavour for the kind of strategies that are available in building these card decks. It's not quite as straightforward as maybe LOL or Dota 2, where things become very cookie cutter. Really cookie cutter, let's face it. The same strategies, the same build strategies, the same play strategies over and over again. What I'm finding with Paragon is the strategies are a lot more open. The meta is a lot more open than you would find on many other MOBAs. And it's because of the way these cards work. The power of the card, the stat lines, the completing the cards, what order you complete these cards, what you decide to slot and when, makes a big difference. So hopefully this tour of the Paragon deck building system has to kind of demystify this a little bit for you. It is a complex system and it's not particularly well explained in the game at all, in fact. But what you have here is something very powerful. Once you break away from those starter decks and you start tinkering in here, you will watch your win rate go up. Because for the simple reason your survivability is going up, your familiarity with the game and how your hero is going to improve as you start attuning your deck to your playstyle, to the style of that hero. Just wait until you get to grips with this. You will find it the most powerful aspect of Paragon, and an area to actually spend quite a lot of time doing theoretical math foo with the deck builder to try and work out the best card combinations for the way you like to play Paragon. So if this has been helpful to you, do please like and subscribe. There'll be plenty more Paragon videos coming up because I am well and truly into this game. There's a lot here to really love, and as this is an alpha and it's really developing literally week by week, we're seeing massive improvements here. It's only becoming more interesting and more fun. The meta is really complex and I like that about it. It's about time we had a game that wasn't quite so cookie cutter.